The distress signal came through the quantum relay at 0347 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Zelkira of the Volani Federation had been monitoring the deep space channels when the transmission broke through the static like a scream in the darkness. Please, anyone, we are the Kithra colony on designation XK7. Under attack, they came from the void, our defenses are failing, please, if anyone can hear this. The message cut to static, then repeated. Over and over, the same desperate plea echoing across the stars. Zelkira's forearms trembled as she reached for the emergency beacon. The Kithra were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their artwork and philosophical contributions. They had no enemies, no conflicts. Who would attack them? But as she prepared to send the standard Federation response, a diplomatic inquiry and offer of mediation, another signal cut through the void. This one was different. Stronger. More focused. Message received, Kithra Colony. United Earth Defense Force responding. ETA to your position, 72 hours. Hold your ground. Help is coming. Zelkira's blood ran cold. The humans were responding? The Deathworlders from Sol 3? She had to stop them. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, watching the tactical display as her fleet emerged from hyperspace. 12 dreadnoughts, 36 cruisers, and over 100 support vessels spread out in perfect formation. The Third Fleet in all its terrible glory. "Ma'am," reported Commander Torres from the sensor station, "we're picking up multiple energy signatures around the Kithra homeworld. Looks like at least 40 vessels of unknown configuration." Unknown? Chen raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. Are they in the Federation database? Negative, Captain. These ships, they're not like anything we've seen before. The energy patterns are completely alien. Chen nodded grimly. In the 5 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Federation, they'd encountered dozens of species. Most were peaceful, though a few had tested Earth's resolve. Those tests had ended badly for the aggressors. "Get me Admiral Morrison," she ordered. A holographic image of Admiral James Morrison materialized on the bridge. Even through the quantum link, his presence commanded attention. Scars crisscrossed his weathered face, souvenirs from the Proxima War and the Siege of New Geneva. "Admiral," Chen began, "we've got an unknown hostile force attacking the Kithra colony. At least 40 ships, possibly more." Morrison's eyes hardened. "Rules of engagement?" "The Kithra are Federation members, sir. And they sent out a distress call. Then we follow Protocol 7. Save the civilians, eliminate the threat." Morrison paused. "Sarah, I'm transmitting additional intel. We intercepted some chatter from the attackers. They're calling themselves the Devourers." Chen's blood chilled. Devourers? Apparently, they consume entire civilizations. Strip mine planets, enslave populations, move on to the next target. The Kithra are just the latest in a long line of victims. How many other colonies have they hit? 17 that we know of. All within the last 6 months. Morrison's image flickered. "Chen, these aren't raiders or pirates. This is systematic genocide. And according to our intelligence, they've been doing it for centuries." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's drives. Chen stared at the tactical display, watching the unknown ships move around the Kithra homeworld like predators circling wounded prey. "Sir," she said finally, "permission to engage the moment we're in range." "Granted. And Sarah? Make sure they understand why you never attack human allies." Ambassador Zelkira's shuttle dropped out of hyperspace just as the human fleet reached the edge of the Kithra system. She'd pushed her small vessel to its limits, racing across 3 sectors to intercept them. "Human vessels," she broadcast on all frequencies, "this is Ambassador Zelkira of the Volani Federation. I must speak with your commanding officer immediately." The response came within seconds. A holographic figure materialized in her shuttle's tiny communication chamber, a human female with dark hair and cold, calculating eyes. "Ambassador, this is Captain Chen of the UES Valkyrie. We're responding to a distress call from the Kythera colony. If you're here to offer assistance, we welcome it. If not, I suggest you clear the system. Captain, you don't understand, Zelkira said, her translator struggling with the urgency in her voice. The Federation has protocols for this situation. We must attempt diplomatic contact first. Perhaps these attackers can be reasoned with. Chen's expression didn't change. Ambassador, with respect, we've been monitoring their communications. They're not here to talk. They're here to kill every living thing on that planet. But surely. Ambassador. Chen's voice carried a weight that made Zelkira's skin crawl. Let me be very clear. The Kythera asked for help. We're giving it to them. Stand aside. The transmission cut off, leaving Zelkira alone in the darkness of space. Through her shuttle's viewport, she could see the human fleet spreading out in attack formation. Each ship bristled with weapons she couldn't identify, their hulls scarred by countless battles. She had to warn the Federation. Had to make them understand what was about to happen. The Devourer fleet had been systematically destroying Kythera settlements for 3 days when the new contacts appeared on their sensors. Fleet Commander Vextai studied the tactical display with interest. The newcomers were smaller than his vessels, more primitive in design. Scan them, he ordered his tactical officer. Identify the species. They appear to be from a world called Earth, came the reply. The species calls itself human. They're unusual. Unusual how? Their homeworld is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, sir. Extreme predator evolution, multiple mass extinction events, violent weather patterns. According to our database, it should be uninhabitable. Vextai's mandibles clicked in amusement. Yet they evolved space travel. Impressive. How many ships? 148 vessels, sir. They're arranging themselves in attack formation. Attack formation? Vextai's amusement deepened. They think to threaten us? We who have consumed 1,000 worlds? He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels, prepare for battle. These mammals seek to interfere with our harvest. Show them the folly of their ways. Captain Chen watched the enemy fleet begin to move. The Devourer ships were massive, each one easily 3 times the size of her dreadnoughts. Their hulls were organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be chitinous armor. Weapons ports opened along their flanks like hungry mouths. Captain, Torres reported, they're charging weapons. Energy signatures are off the charts. All ships, this is Valkyrie, Chen broadcast. Weapons free. Execute Formation Delta. Let's show these bastards what happens when you hurt our friends. The human fleet exploded into motion. Unlike the ponderous movements of the Devourer ships, the human vessels moved with predatory grace. They accelerated at rates that would have killed any other species, their crews protected by advanced inertial dampeners developed from decades of combat experience. The first salvo from the Devourer fleet lit up space with energy beams that could slice through moon-sized asteroids. The humans scattered like startled fish, their ships weaving between the deadly rays with impossible precision. Then they fired back. Shen had often wondered what it would be like to face humanity's weapons as an enemy. Now she knew. The quantum torpedoes streaked across the void like falling stars, each one containing enough destructive power to level a city. The particle beams carved through space with surgical precision, targeting weapon systems and engines with deadly accuracy. The first Devourer ship to die exploded in a fireball that could be seen from the planet's surface. The second followed moments later, its hull cracking open like an egg to spill atmosphere and crew into the vacuum. Target their command ship, Chen ordered. Let's cut off the head of this snake. Fleet Commander Vextai watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans fought like nothing he'd ever encountered. They ignored losses, pressing attacks even when faced with overwhelming firepower. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, covering each other's weaknesses while exploiting every opening in his formation. Sir, his tactical officer reported, voice shaking, we've lost 12 vessels. Their weapons are they're designed to kill ships like ours. Vexed Eye's compound eyes focused on the display. The human ships were indeed targeting specific weak points, joints in the armor, power conduits, sensor arrays. They fought with a precision that spoke of careful study and planning. Who are these humans? He demanded. According to our databases, they're a relatively new species. They only achieved spaceflight within the last few centuries. Impossible. No species develops such advanced weaponry that quickly. Sir, the tactical officer's voice dropped to a whisper, they didn't develop them for space combat. These weapons were designed for fighting their own kind. The full horror of the situation hit Vextai like a physical blow. These weren't just any predators, they were apex predators who had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing their own species. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy had been honed through countless wars against enemies who thought exactly like them. Order all ships to withdraw, he commanded. We're leaving this system. Sir, the harvest is over. Signal the retreat. Chen watched the surviving Devourer ships begin to pull back, their formation breaking apart as they fled toward the system's edge. Part of her wanted to pursue, to hunt down every last one of them. But her mission was clear: protect the Kythera. All ships, secure the system, she ordered. I want combat air patrols around every inhabited world. And get me a damage report. Ma'am, Torres replied, we lost the destroyer Harrison and the cruiser Midway. Total casualties, 237. Chen closed her eyes. 237 of her people, dead because some alien species thought they could prey on humanity's friends. Captain, came a new voice from the communications station, we're receiving a transmission from the Kythera homeworld. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a praying mantis. Its wings were iridescent, shimmering with colors that had no names in any human language. Humans, the creature said, its voice musical despite the translator's mechanical rendering, I am Elder Silthera of the Kythera Council. We cannot express our gratitude for what you have done. You saved our entire species. Chen felt some of her anger fade. Elder Silthera, it's an honor. We're just glad we could help. Help? The Elder's antennae quivered. You brought an entire armada to our aid. You fought creatures that had terrified us beyond measure. You lost your own people for strangers you had never met. This is not help, this is heroism beyond our comprehension. Elder, the Kythera are members of the Federation. That makes you our allies. And we protect our allies. But why? Why risk so much for people you barely know? Chen was quiet for a long moment. How could she explain humanity's nature to a species that had never known war? How could she make them understand that to humans, the strong protecting the weak wasn't just a moral choice, it was an evolutionary imperative? Because that's what we do, she said finally. On our world, we learned long ago that the only way to survive was to stand together. The strong protect the weak, the many protect the few. It's not about owing favors or political alliances. It's about being human. 3 days later, Ambassador Zelkira stood before the Galactic Federation Council, her report trembling in her 4 hands. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all waiting to hear her account of the Kythera incident. The humans, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, they brought 148 warships. A murmur ran through the chamber. Counselor Predhan of the Zorvani Collective raised a tentacle. Surely you mean 14 ships, Ambassador? No, Counselor. 148. An entire battle fleet. The murmur became a roar of disbelief. Chancellor Mordak of the Hegemony Worlds pounded his gavel for order. Ambassador, he said, his voice dripping with skepticism, you're telling us that humanity responded to a simple distress call with enough firepower to conquer a solar system? Yes, Chancellor. And they weren't seeking conquest. They were seeking to protect the Kythera. But why? What did they hope to gain? Zelkira looked around the chamber at the faces of species who had known only peace for millennia. How could she make them understand what she had witnessed? They gained nothing, Chancellor. They asked for nothing. They simply helped. That's absurd, scoffed Counselor Vexana of the Synthetic Collective. No species commits such resources without expecting something in return. The humans do. Zelkera's voice grew stronger. I spoke with their Captain Chen. She told me something that I think we all need to hear. She activated the holographic display, showing the recording of her conversation with the human officer. The Kithara are members of the Federation. That makes you our allies. And we protect our allies. The chamber fell silent as Chen's words echoed through the space. But why, came Zelkera's recorded voice. Why risk so much for people you barely know? Because that's what we do. On our world, we learned long ago that the only way to survive was to stand together. The strong protect the weak, the many protect the few. It's not about owing favors or political alliances. It's about being human. Chancellor Mordak was the first to speak. If this is true, then humanity represents either the greatest threat or the greatest ally the Federation has ever encountered. With respect, Chancellor, Zelkera replied, I believe we have our answer. The Devourers had been systematically destroying Federation worlds for months. Our response was to send diplomatic missions that never returned. Humanity's response was to send an armada that ended the threat in a single battle. She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of beings who had grown comfortable in their peace. Perhaps, she said quietly, it's time we learned something from the Deathworlders. Admiral Morrison reviewed the after-action reports from the Kithara operation while sipping his morning coffee. The Third Fleet had performed flawlessly, but the strategic implications of the battle were what kept him awake at night. Sir, came a voice from his office intercom, Ambassador Williams is here to see you. Send her in. Elizabeth Williams entered the office with the brisk efficiency that had made her one of Earth's most effective diplomats. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes held the sharp intelligence that had negotiated humanity's entry into the Federation. Admiral, she said, taking a seat across from his desk, we need to talk about the Kithara incident. I assume the Federation is unhappy about our response? Actually, no. They're terrified. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Terrified? James, we just demonstrated that humanity can deploy overwhelming force anywhere in Federation space within 72 hours. From their perspective, we went from helpful newcomers to potential existential threat overnight. We saved an entire species from genocide. Yes, and that's exactly what has them scared. Williams leaned forward. Think about it from their point of view. They've grown comfortable with their diplomatic solutions and peacekeeping forces. Then along comes a species that responds to cries for help with armadas. Morrison set down his coffee cup. What are you saying, Beth? I'm saying that we may have fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The other species are starting to realize that humanity doesn't just have advanced technology, we have an advanced understanding of warfare. We're not just another member of the Federation. We're the Federation's military. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Isn't it? What happens when our interests conflict with theirs? What happens when we decide that their diplomatic solutions aren't working fast enough? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Through his office window, he could see the construction yards where the Fourth Fleet was taking shape. Humanity's shipbuilding capacity had expanded exponentially since joining the Federation, driven by the need to defend their new allies. Beth, he said finally, there's something you need to know. The Kithara incident wasn't an isolated event. He activated his desk display, showing a star chart of Federation space. Red markers indicated worlds that had been attacked by the Devourers. 17 worlds hit in the last 6 months, he continued. Over 40 billion casualties. And the Federation's response was to send diplomatic missions that never returned. Williams stared at the display. My God. The Devourers have been systematically testing Federation defenses. They've learned that most species will negotiate rather than fight. They've learned that the Federation's military is designed for peacekeeping, not warfare. But they didn't count on us. No, they didn't. And neither did our allies. Morrison stood and walked to the window. Beth, I've been in touch with Captain Chen. The Devourers didn't just retreat from the Kythera system. They sent a message to their main fleet. What kind of message? A warning. They're telling every Devourer ship in the galaxy about humanity. About what we're capable of. Williams joined him at the window. That sounds like a good thing. It is. But it also means we're going to be tested. Every predator species in the galaxy is going to want to know if the stories about humanity are true. And if they are? Morrison's reflection in the window showed a smile that held no warmth. Then they're going to learn why you never threaten a Deathworlders, friends. The Kythera homeworld had been transformed in the weeks following the attack. The organic architecture that had made their cities famous throughout the galaxy was slowly being rebuilt, but with a difference. Human engineers worked alongside Kythera artisans, integrating defense systems into the flowing, beautiful structures. Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead engineer on the project, stood in what had once been the capital city's central plaza. The Kythera had called it the Garden of Harmonious Thoughts. Now it housed a planetary defense grid capable of stopping a fleet. Dr. Kim, came a musical voice behind her. She turned to see Elder Silthara approaching, her wings folded respectfully. Elder, Sarah replied, bowing in the Kythera fashion. How can I help you? I wanted to thank you for your work here. The integration of your defensive systems with our architecture is remarkable. You've managed to preserve the beauty while adding the protection we need. Sarah looked around the plaza. The defense grid was nearly invisible, its components disguised as artistic elements. Energy conduits ran through what appeared to be decorative vines. Sensor arrays were hidden within flower-like sculptures. Your people are artists, she said. We just wanted to make sure you could continue creating. But why? Silthara's antennae quivered with genuine curiosity. Your species has invested enormous resources in protecting us. You've lost ships, lost lives. And now you're helping us rebuild. What do you gain from this? Sarah considered the question. It was one she'd been asked dozens of times since arriving on the Kythera homeworld. Elder, she said finally, do you know what happened to humanity's first space colony? I'm afraid I don't. It was called New Eden. A beautiful world, perfect for human life. We sent our best and brightest to establish it. 20,000 colonists, the flower of human civilization. Sarah's voice grew quiet. A species called the Zektar attacked it. They were raiders, looking for easy prey. They found an undefended colony full of scientists and artists and families. What happened? They killed everyone. Every man, woman, and child. They took what they wanted and left the bodies to rot. Silthara's wings fluttered with distress. I'm so sorry. When Earth found out, we sent a fleet. Not to negotiate, not to file protests with some galactic authority. We sent a fleet to make sure the Zektar could never hurt anyone again. And did you succeed? Sarah's smile was cold. The Zektar are extinct. Every ship, every colony, every trace of their civilization. We didn't just defeat them, we erased them from existence. The elder was quiet for a long moment. That seems extreme. Does it? They killed 20,000 innocent people. They would have killed 20,000 more if we'd let them. Sarah turned to face the elder directly. Elder, humanity learned a hard lesson that day. The universe is full of predators. The only way to protect the innocent is to be more dangerous than the things that hunt them. But you're not just protecting yourselves now. You're protecting us. Because you're worth protecting. Because you create beauty and wonder and hope. Because when the predators came for you, you didn't try to hurt them back, you asked for help. Sarah gestured to the rebuilt plaza around them. This is what we fight for, Elder. Not territory or resources or glory. We fight for the right of peaceful people to live in peace. In the depths of space, far from any star or planet, the Devourer fleet had regrouped. What had once been a mighty armada of 50 ships was now reduced to 38 scarred and damaged vessels. The survivors of the Kythera disaster huddled in the darkness, licking their wounds and planning their next move. Fleet Commander Vextai stood in the command center of his flagship, studying intelligence reports about the humans. The data was disturbing. This wasn't just another spacefaring species, it was something unprecedented. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we've received responses from our deep space probes. The humans have been expanding their military presence throughout Federation space." "How extensive?" 15 major fleets, sir. Over 2,000 ships of various classes. And they're still building. Vextai's mandibles clicked nervously. 2,000 ships? For a species that's only been in space for a few centuries? That's not the worst part, sir. We've analyzed their ship designs. Every single one is purpose-built for warfare. Not exploration, not commerce, not science. War. That's impossible. No species develops that kind of military focus without external pressure. Actually, sir, they did have external pressure. They fought themselves. The intelligence officer activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of human wars flashed past, primitive conflicts with spears and arrows, mechanized warfare with tanks and aircraft, finally nuclear weapons that could sterilize continents. For most of their recorded history, humans have been fighting each other. They've perfected the art of warfare through millennia of conflict. When they finally achieved spaceflight, they didn't abandon those skills. They enhanced them. Vextai watched the images with growing horror. This species had spent thousands of years learning how to kill its own kind. They had developed strategies and tactics through constant warfare, refined their weapons through endless conflict. "Sir," the intelligence officer continued, "there's something else. The humans have a concept they call mutually assured destruction. They built weapons powerful enough to kill every living thing on their planet, pointed them at each other, and somehow achieved peace through the threat of total annihilation. They're insane." "No, sir. They're just very, very good at warfare. And now they're using those skills to protect their allies." Vextai studied the tactical display showing human fleet positions. They were spread throughout Federation space, positioned to respond to threats within days rather than weeks. "What about the other Federation species? Surely they're concerned about human military buildup?" "Actually, sir, they're encouraging it. After the Kythera incident, 17 other species have requested human protection. The humans are building new fleets as fast as they can to meet the demand." The full scope of the disaster hit Vextai like a physical blow. By attacking the Kythera, the Devourers had awakened something that had been sleeping in the galaxy. They had forced humanity to reveal its true nature, and that revelation was changing everything. "Sir," came another voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony worlds." "The hegemony? What do they want?" "They're offering us a contract, sir. They want to hire us to test human defenses in the Outer Rim." Vextai considered the offer. The hegemony was one of the oldest and most powerful factions in the galaxy. If they were concerned about human expansion, perhaps there was still a way to turn this situation to the Devourers' advantage. "What are the terms?" "Full military support, access to their shipyards, and 100 billion credits. In exchange, we conduct raids on human-protected worlds and report back on their response capabilities." "And if we refuse?" "Then we continue hiding in the void while the humans consolidate their power." Vextai's compound eyes studied the star charts. The humans were indeed expanding rapidly, their fleets growing stronger every day. Soon, they would be powerful enough to hunt down the Devourers wherever they hid. "Accept the contract," he decided. "But not for the credits. We need to know what we're really dealing with." Admiral Morrison stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the Pentagon, watching as intelligence reports flowed in from across the galaxy. The holographic display showed the current positions of all human fleets, along with threat assessments for every known hostile force. "Sir," reported Colonel Martinez from the Intelligence Division, we've detected unusual activity in the hegemony sectors. Long-range sensors are picking up ship movements that don't match normal trade patterns. What kind of movements? Military formations, sir. Large ones. And they're moving toward the Outer Rim colonies. Morrison studied the display. The Outer Rim was humanity's newest territory, a collection of worlds that had requested protection after the Kythera incident. They were lightly defended, protected by only a few destroyer squadrons and some orbital defense platforms. Could be coincidence, he mused. The hegemony has been expanding their influence for centuries. Sir, there's more. We've intercepted communications suggesting that the hegemony has hired mercenaries for an operation in that sector. What kind of mercenaries? Unknown, sir. But the comm traffic mentions testing human response capabilities. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. They're going to attack our colonies. It looks that way, sir. Should we reinforce the Outer Rim? No. Morrison's voice was firm. That's exactly what they want us to do. They want to see how we deploy our forces, how quickly we can respond to threats. Then what do we do? Morrison smiled grimly. We show them what happens when you test a Deathworlder's patience. He activated the fleet communication system. This is Admiral Morrison to all fleet commanders. Operation Thunderstrike is now active. Prepare for immediate deployment. Around the galaxy, human fleets began to move. Not toward the Outer Rim, but toward the heart of hegemony space. If the hegemony wanted to test humanity's military capabilities, they were about to get a demonstration they would never forget. The attack on the Outer Rim colony of New Harmony came without warning. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of locusts, their organic ships blotting out the stars as they fell upon the defenseless world. Colony Administrator Jane Foster watched from the command center as the first wave of landing craft descended toward the surface. The colony's defense force consisted of a single destroyer squadron, 4 ships against 40. It wouldn't be enough. Ma'am, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the communications station, we've got incoming transmissions from the attack fleet. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a shark. Its multiple eyes gleamed with predatory hunger as it spoke. Humans of New Harmony, it said, its voice translated by the colony's computers, you have 30 minutes to evacuate your world. After that, we will begin the harvest. Foster straightened in her chair. This is Colony Administrator Foster. You are attacking a sovereign human colony under the protection of the United Earth Defense Force. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The creature's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Consequences? Human, you have 4 ships. We have 40. What consequences could you possibly threaten us with? You'll find out. Foster cut the transmission and turned to her communications officer. Get me Admiral Morrison. Priority Alpha. Ma'am, Admiral Morrison is en route to the hegemony core worlds. He won't be able to respond in time. Then get me whoever can respond. The reply came within minutes. New Harmony, this is Admiral Park of the 5th Fleet. We've received your distress call. ETA to your position is 6 hours. Foster felt her heart sink. 6 hours was too long. The Devourers would have completed their harvest by then. Admiral, she replied, we can't hold for 6 hours. We need immediate assistance. Understood, New Harmony. You won't be holding for 6 hours. You'll be holding for 20 minutes. 20 minutes? I don't understand. Administrator Foster, are you familiar with the concept of strategic reserves? Foster's blood ran cold. You mean? The Outer Rim colonies aren't as defenseless as they appear. Emergency Protocol 7 is now active. All civilians to emergency shelters. All defense forces to battle stations. Around New Harmony, space began to ripple. Hidden bases that had been disguised as asteroids revealed themselves. Weapons platforms that had been dark and silent for years suddenly blazed to life. And from the depths of the colony's own underground bunkers, launch tubes opened to reveal hundreds of automated defense drones. The Devourers had walked into a trap. Fleet Commander Vextai watched in horror as the human colony transformed before his eyes. What had appeared to be a helpless target was revealed as a fortress world bristling with weapons. The 4 destroyers he'd dismissed as insignificant were joined by 30 more vessels emerging from hidden bases. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking, "we're reading massive energy buildup from the planet's surface. They've got orbital bombardment platforms hidden in the continental shelves." "How is that possible?" "Our intelligence said this world was lightly defended." "Sir, I think their intelligence was deliberately misleading. They wanted us to attack." The first salvo from the hidden defenses lit up space like a second sun. Particle beams designed to stop asteroids carved through Devourer ships like they were made of paper. Quantum torpedoes that could crack continents turned the void into a hellscape of fire and destruction. "All ships, withdraw," Vextai ordered. "Emergency jump to hyperspace." "Sir, we can't. They're jamming our navigation systems." Vextai's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. The humans weren't just defending, they were hunting. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, cutting off escape routes and herding the Devourer fleet into a killing zone. "Sir," came a new voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." The main screen showed a human female in military uniform. Her expression was coldly professional, but her eyes held the promise of violence. "Devourer fleet," she said, "this is Admiral Park of the 5th Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." Vextai activated his own transmitter. "Human, you have won this battle. But we are not the only threat you face. The hegemony hired us to test your defenses. They wanted to know if the stories about your species were true." "And what will you tell them?" "That the stories don't do you justice. That humanity is something the galaxy has never seen before." Admiral Park's expression didn't change. "You attacked innocent civilians. You murdered entire species. You forfeited any right to mercy when you chose to become predators. We surrender. We invoke the protection of the Galactic Accords." "The Galactic Accords don't apply to war crimes. And genocide is a war crime." The transmission cut off, leaving Vextai alone with the knowledge of what was about to happen. The humans weren't just going to defeat the Devourer fleet, they were going to end it. The battle for New Harmony lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Devourer fleet existed only as debris and radiation. Not a single ship escaped. Not a single crew member survived. Administrator Foster stood in the colony's command center, staring at the tactical display in stunned silence. The most feared raiders in the galaxy had been completely annihilated. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Park reported, "Admiral Park is requesting permission to land. She wants to inspect the colony for damage." "Granted." "And Lieutenant? Send a message to Admiral Morrison. Tell him Operation Thunderstrike can proceed as planned." "Ma'am?" Foster turned to look at her communications officer. "Lieutenant, did you really think this was just about defending one colony?" Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the hegemony core system. 72 hours had passed since the attack on New Harmony. 72 hours for the hegemony to realize they had made a terrible mistake. "Sir," reported Captain Stevens from the tactical station.